Hello, everyone. Mic check. Hope everyone can hear me okay. Um, Welcome to everyone. Hi, everyone. Good evening and welcome to all, especially our panelists today. Thank you for your leadership. You're mostly folks I know personally who have dedicated most of your adult lives to your trade. So easily 20 years on average, not to make anyone here feel old. My name is Ayo Akindele, founder and CEO at Kyshi. Kyshi is a UK-based cross-border payments and trade enablement platform, powering global businesses expansion into and across Africa, especially through our merchant of record service that helps connect global businesses to African markets in hours using our all-in-one API, or simply by creating a payment link to collect payments in local currencies in Africa. We're very big on Africa and its growth, and we like to think of Kyshi as not just another payment facilitation platform, but as a voice for people, culture, and impact. Having spent most of my life in the UK, I've seen firsthand the huge role efficient logistics systems play in the development of intracontinental trade. The Royal Mail is one of the largest, most important, and oldest institutions in the UK, along with other national postal services in Europe. They collaborate and have built the systems upon which so much trade around the region relies. The EU is its own largest trading partner. This is possible due to a myriad of reasons, of course. A critical element of this is logistics. This relies on critical infrastructure like roads, rail, open borders, currencies, VAT uniformity, etc. So we may not get all the answers we need today. And that's why we decided to organize Kyshi Bridge, with this being the maiden edition. So Kyshi Bridge is a series on business growth, digital payments, and scaling internationally. Its goal is to discuss prevalent issues and trends within the global world of work. In the coming editions, we aim to explore many other sectors and industries by bringing in industry experts who can share insights and probable solutions to these challenges. For this edition, we decided to talk about the challenges and the necessary relationship between the fashion, retail, and logistics industries, because we believe that this relationship holds the key to the future of African fashion being exported on a global scale. We sent out an article recently where we shared some shocking stats about the African fashion and logistics industries, like the fact that intracontinental trade accounts for just approximately 15% of total African exports, compared to 58% in Asia and 68% in Europe. Or the other fact that while Africa produces 10% of the world's raw cotton, 90% of it is exported to Asia, making the African continent a net importer of cotton fabrics and yarn. The way forward is clear. We need to dialogue on the interconnectedness of these two industries. And that's what we'll learn today. So I'm not a speaker today, so I should probably pass the baton to those who will really educate us. And there's no better way to do that than by introducing our moderator for today, Zach Sitcher, the co-founder of African Market Insights, who's truly passionate about learning about the rich and diverse culture in Africa and the opportunities within the continent. So once again, thank you for lending your time to share, and we look forward to the great strides we'll all make in our own little way towards building the Africa of our dreams. Hi, Zach. Nice to see you.
Hey,
over to
hey
you.
Ayo, thanks so much for having me. I really appreciate it. It's absolutely great to be here. I spent the last 5 years or so trading bonds on Wall Street, but decided to leave because I saw so much opportunity in Africa. And so I'm in the middle of spending a year just traveling the continent, meeting with, listening to, and learning from local entrepreneurs and investors about the opportunities here and how the West might be able to more effectively partner with local people in that. With that being said, fashion is obviously such a big part of the African culture, and trade is an enormous part of what makes economies grow. And so to give you guys a little bit of a background on where we're going here, we have two goals for this evening. And the first is to understand the opportunities in the fashion industry and the root causes of the challenges we face as it relates to trade. in the fashion industry. And then the second is to create actionable takeaways for driving seamless trade across the industry. The way that we'll structure the conversation is I'll spend a couple minutes introducing our panelists, and then we'll jump into the challenges in African logistics, the challenges in African fashion, and then we'll move to payment technologies and spend a little time towards the end collaborating on ways that we can streamline trade in the fashion industry across the continent. And we'll also leave a little bit of time for Q&A. So if you have any questions, feel free to put that in the comments section here on StreamYard. But let's get into introducing our panelists to start. The first one is the one and only Tola Odeyemi, Postmaster General and CEO of the Nigerian Postal Service. Thank you so much for being here, Tola. It's an absolute privilege to have you on the panel.
Thank you for having me here.
Absolutely. The second one we have is Oluwaseun Ojo, Deputy General Manager of E-commerce and Digital Applications at GIG Logistics. Thank you so much for being here as well. The third we have is Ridwan Rashid, Co-founder and Chief Product Officer of Ship. We then have Ujama Akpada, Co-founder of Cargo Plug, Shiun Ali, Co-founder and CEO of Fez Delivery Co., the one and only Ozina Anamudu, founder of Ozina, Wanuola Okoye, Chief Commercial Officer of Persianas Retail. And then we've got Banke Kuku, founder of Banke Kuku Textiles. And last, but certainly not least, Obida Obihoa, Creative Director of Obida and Oda Art. So to kick us off, I'll turn it over to Oluwaseun and Ujama to talk a little bit about African logistics. But what are the biggest logistic challenges you face when moving goods across African borders? And specifically, what are the challenges like for those time-sensitive deliveries like fashion items or even things like perishable goods?
Okay, hi everyone. My name is Ujama. So I think can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, so I think there are a couple of things. I would say, first of all, one of the challenges will be inconsistent regulations across the globe. What's allowed in one country is not allowed in another country. And I'll give an example. For example, sending food items out of the country, for example, there are some countries that don't allow meat products, while there are others that do allow that. There are some countries that don't allow cosmetics. So you really do have to know what is allowed in terms of shipping out of the country. Another challenge will have to be the limited cargo space. I think about a year or 2 years ago, there were issues where there were huge backlogs with the airlines. So now you have the products, but then there are backlogs with the airlines in terms of shipping things out of the country. So that's another issue. Unpredictable customs. You have cases where in terms of things coming into the country, the customs regulations are changed or the prices are changed, which leads to strikes. You have the strike, you're negotiating between clearing agents and the customs officials. That causes infrastructure. We're talking about the road infrastructure in terms of reaching countries like Ghana, Abidjan. It's not exactly the easiest mode of transport, moving things around. And things like that cause delays. Those delays lead to perishable items being lost. The delays also lead to customers not being able to, so our clients not being able to deliver on the service that they want to their customers in terms of sending food items. So that's just a few of the things that I can think of at the moment that prevent or kind of make it a lot difficult to do cargo services within the country out of cross-border logistics.
That's so good. Really, really appreciate that. How about you, Oluwaseun?
Hello?
Looks like you might be muted.
Okay, can you hear me now? Hi, Zach.
Yeah, we can.
Yes, thank you. Good evening, everyone. All right. So I think that Uzama has done a very fantastic job at itemizing some of the challenges, critical challenges that faces cross-border logistics within the region, right? And I'll just sum it up to say that we need to practice more good neighborliness. Let me put it that way, right? Um, the West African region, especially, I would say that as it stands today, we're not good neighbors, right? Because take for example, why do I need to go through 4 different custom checks, right? Pay 4 different customs duty just to deliver an item from Nigeria to Abidjan? Why do I need to go through all of that stress? I mean, pass through the semi border, pass through a flower border, pass through all, I mean, different levels of borders and checks and scrutinies just because I need to deliver a package from Nigeria to Ghana or to Cote d'Ivoire, for example, right? And I think that we're not lacking when it comes to policies and programs that seeks to address some of these challenges. A major challenge has been implementation, right? So I think that the closest thing that has come to solving some of these challenges or addressing these concerns would be the AFCTA, right? But I mean, are you going to get to Seme border and talk to the customs official about AFCTA? As it stands today, it is easier to ship an item from Lagos to anywhere in Europe than it is to ship an item from Nigeria to Ghana. And that is because of some of these inherent bureaucracies that we face, chief of which is customs related issues. So I think that if we can address this, I mean, would have better regional trade. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks for that. So it seems like regulations, bureaucracy, infrastructure, those are some of the core things there. I'd love to turn it over to Shayun and Ridwan. How have issues like poor infrastructure, customs delays affected your delivery times and costs? If you can, put some numbers to that, and what have you done to kind of address those or try to mitigate those issues?
Hi, everyone. And thank you, Zach. So to your question, we operate largely last mile within Nigeria, and so and then we do international deliveries as well. But I would even address the issue as affect us locally. So obviously we deal with the road infrastructure issue where within Nigeria, even moving from one state to another can be unpredictable. Predictable and unpredictable at the same time. You're moving from Lagos to Abuja, and you think that ordinarily this should take you about 9 to 12 hours if you're moving by road. And for some weird reasons, there's traffic, bad road network, poor infrastructure generally, and that could move from 9 hours to 24 hours very, very quickly. What this does is it automatically affects your delivery promise to your customers, especially for, a lot of logistic companies would typically promise for Abuja delivery, for instance, typically promise 2 to 3 working days. But sometimes, especially in fact, there are tougher times where you would run into traffic in places like Lokoja and your vehicle or truck can be on the road for 2 to 3 days. So imagine you promising your customers 2 to 3 days and your truck is still on the road within the same time frame. What happens is you automatically missed that delivery promise to your customer, and this could cost us a lot. And if you maybe not to put actual numbers to it, imagine where customers come, you have maybe 10% of your customers asking for a refund, refund of, you're going to refund them the cost of the package or parcel, as well as the cost of delivery as well, just because you failed to deliver on the promise and because they had event or things to do with those parcels. So, I don't think we can overemphasize how road infrastructure affects us. It's great when everything is moving fast. Your 9 hours or 12 hours is 12 hours, which is what it is in other parts of the world. And I think it was shown that mentioned that it's easier to even do deliveries to, across, from Nigeria to some parts of Europe than do it within West Africa. That is also localized, right? You could move your deliveries from Nigeria to UK in 48 hours, 24 to 48 hours. And some parts of Nigeria you cannot achieve that within for some parts of Nigeria. How are we solving these problems? For us, we are leveraging route optimization. We are looking at hub expansion. We are moving more hubs to places where we have more customers, so that we are closer to the customers and maybe cut some travel time here and there. We're also leveraging partnerships, right? I don't want to dwell too much on the custom and border delays, because Sheon and Ujama already spoke to that largely. So we're looking, but for other things, beyond the route optimization and hub expansion, we're also leveraging partnerships. We're working closely with local aggregators for local deliveries. We're working with custom brokers for international deliveries. The question is, how sustainable is this, right? Because brokers change. It also increases your cost, right? Because you're going to pay your brokerage fee, whichever way. But in the meantime, we can continue to leverage. We continue to leverage these partnerships, and hoping that, because the local aggregators and the custom brokers understand the terrain, they understand all the port nuances, and they can help us speed up clearing processes for international and then local aggregators, alongside hub expansion can also help us handle the local side. I think I'll just stop here and allow Ridwan add to that. Thank you.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks. Ridwan, you want to add in?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you very much, Sharon, and thank you, Zach. So, good evening once again, everybody. I'm excited to share the evening with you all. When I look at this question, what is saddening is that what the infrastructure you expect that would be the major issue that is causing most of the delays and hardship in terms of shipping to African countries that we exist today are not even the most important ones. Are not even the road networks, the airspace, and so on and so forth. It's actually lack of information, right? It's so saddening that most African countries, you can't even find their import requirements on several items and goods and services online or on their website, right? Some don't even have websites, some don't have functional ones, some don't respond to emails, and so on and so forth. So what should take you typically an exchange over email takes like forever. So if you don't really have somebody on the ground who knows how the country works, maybe who can help sort some kickbacks here and there, you will not be able to expedite deliveries. And as businesses, right, especially in the logistics space, it is about volume. The more volume you can process faster, the more margins you can make. Nobody is in business to count bridges, right? When business to make impact and be profitable. So as we're doing this here and there, we're ensuring that we're focused on the segment areas that brings in the most returns. And usually African countries don't usually give us that, because usually of the lack of information about import-export requirements in most of those countries. Nigeria is still a lot better compared to even most countries that we found around. Most of our neighboring countries, the only information that that you can have about them that's usually commonly available, is usually the West African information for import is all of this agreement. Take away that, you almost find anything non-existent there. Usually, it's usually a cash-based transaction. You have to speak one-on-one, sort one person or the other, and so on and so forth, right? It's just ridiculous. Another thing that you might also be shocked of is unexplainably ridiculous tariff. When you're importing items to some African countries, and you're asking, why is the AfCFTA not working, or why are we not understanding this? So they would, you can see that it's almost okay for them for items to come in from other countries like China, like the US, like the UK, and so on and so forth, than for it to come from from other neighboring countries. So these are some of the issues that exist down the line. When we started SHIP, because SHIP is an aggregator of a lot of courier companies, and we basically help people pick and choose which couriers they want to use and make it easier. So we've tried and bring out a lot of road exporters on board the platform. And what we've seen basically is that the kind of issues that they have on the road and everything makes that kind of business not sustainable, right? Whereas, you would be amazed about the number of road networks that actually connect most African countries, to each other. Some are in terrible states, some are okay, especially the West African corridors are still fairly okay. But take away from there and move south, it becomes terrible. But aside this being there, you still found that the fact that there's no transparency in this thing, in how countries deal with them, deals with trade, makes it even harder to do business with them. So it's easier for people to sell to export items, sell their fashion items, their retail items, agricultural produce to other countries in the UK, the US, the Asia, and so on and so forth, than to our neighbors. So these are some of the things that I think we need to start from. Make it easier and known on how best people can import into different countries, make it easier and faster. Whether it's getting emails or phone lines that you can call to have trade dispute resolved as soon as possible, make tariffs known, connect them to online payment and so on and so forth. So thank you.
Awesome. Thanks so much for sharing that, Ridwan. Tola, I'd love to turn it over to you. Obviously, you've got a depth and breadth of experience. And from a national postal perspective, whether it's NIPOST or other countries' postal services, what have been the key challenges affecting intra-African logistics and trade? And from the NIPOST perspective, what steps are being taken to address this? And then I'd love to do a follow-on question with you after.
Okay, great. Thanks for the question, Zach. So I think from a national perspective, and it's weird, not that it's weird, but I think that people think that because NIPOST is NIPOST, we sort of have different challenges from your average courier companies. Like every single challenge that everybody online has spoken about is something that NIPOST faces, from infrastructure to even Nigerian Customs Service, tariffs, and whatever. I think the only advantage that we have as a Nigerian Postal Service is that we deal with other postal operators, right? So, for example, if I have to ship something to Ghana, for example, I don't need to look for who's going to clear it, because Ghana Post, right, who's also working with their own customs service, they will just clear either the tariffs are prepaid or paid to the Ghanaian government, and that's how all postal operators work globally. Now, in terms of challenges, I think one definitely would be air travel. So, for example, because within Africa, typically people use smaller planes, like airlines like Askai, Awa. For regional flights, the planes are smaller, meaning that there's less cargo space, and it makes it really, really hard. So sometimes anything going to the US, Canada, Europe, I put it on a KLM Air France flight. It's there in 2-3 days maximum. And all I have to wait for is the designated operator to clear it on that side. Meanwhile, here, because planes are smaller, I could have something bound. I'll give an example. I had something bound for Cote d'Ivoire, and it was literally sitting at the airport for 2 weeks because all the flights that were landing, the Air Ivoire flights, were too small to take any cargo. I had to end up taking it on a KQ flight. So it went to Kenya first, sat in Kenya for 3 weeks before it finally went to Cote d'Ivoire. So I think inter-Africa trade, because there's no sort of dedicated, I would say, cargo airline that runs through Africa. Everybody's just sort of piggybacking on passenger flights, which are really small. I mean, some airlines use the same as what you find on Ibom Air or on national flights, right? So, and the Nigerian Customs Service for us is the same issue. Sometimes, even for NIPOST, tariffs are vague. We have customers who complain, saying that, well, this thing only costs $200. Why is the tariff on it 700,000 naira? And we have to do the back and forth with the Nigerian Customs Service. So what are we doing? One, I think for us, what we're trying to do is gather more licenses. So right now we're going through the process of getting our own customs brokerage license. Again, it's probably easier for Nigerian Postal Service, but it's very key for us in terms of delivery times, even for us to get our own remuneration from other countries sending things inbound into Nigeria, as well as, also as we're ramping up outbound items as well. Obviously, digitization without any doubt, because everybody wants to see what they're going, where their items are at any point in time. And I think that for us, I wouldn't say Nigerian Postal Service, from a Universal Postal Union point of view, and a PAPU. So Universal Postal Union is our global union for all postal operators, and PAPU is the African Postal Union. What we're trying to do, there are a couple of programs that Nigerian Postal Service is keyed into. One is Trade Post. The Trade Post is a UPU program that basically is creating trade routes between countries, right? So you sign bilaterals. Right now, we're signed with Cote d'Ivoire, and when the project goes live, we'll then start signing up with different countries, which allows for easier cross-border payments. The second one is the Prosperity Zone project, and I'll talk more about that. It's a very complex project, but basically what it is solving the e-commerce, because even for designated operators, for Royal Mail, for USPS, any other large sort of postal operator you could find, e-commerce tracking is still a huge problem for them, because most e-commerce companies do not use postal operator standards. I don't know how to put it. Postal operation standards are standards that have been in place since 1857 when UPU started. And it's very different from what like DHL uses, what Amazon uses, right? And so at the UPU level, what they're working with is the World Customs Organization and the big e-commerce companies to sort of standardize so that even a postal label, sorry if I get a bit technical, the postal labels, the postal information matches e-commerce information, meaning so it's easier for anybody either outbound or inbound to send e-commerce items through postal. So for example, the reason why e-commerce wouldn't work for NiPost is that once I send something to England, for example, I don't have any control over it. Again, it's handed over to Royal Mail. I have zero control over it. I can't send it to another business there. It's not allowed by the Universal Postal Union. So sometimes there's a limitation. So customers are like, oh, it hasn't gotten there. Well, for me, it's in England. It's been handed over to Royal Mail. After that, I have zero control over how long it'll take Royal Mail or USPS to deliver it. Thank you.
Awesome. And Tola, a couple more questions for you, and this next one can be brief. The signing of the AFCFTA in 2021, has that yielded any material changes in the time that it takes to move packages between countries?
No, it hasn't.
No. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Now the second question is like, help us dream with some of the stuff that you guys are putting in place and whatnot. In 5 to 10 years, where do you see African trade being as far as like, regulations go and things like that to do more and scale more intra-African trade?
I think in the next 5 to 10 years, because right now, even at so not NiPost, I was mentioning PAPU, which is the African Postal Union, we have a conference coming up next week. And basically what we're all the African postal CEOs are sitting down to discuss how to plug the postal system into the Africa Continental Free Trade Agreement, because it's also an issue. So that's one. And the projects that I mentioned, the Trade Post and the PPZ, are things that the UPU is doing particularly for the African market, particularly the Trade Post is for the African market to key into the Continental Free Trade Agreement. And once we're plugged into that, I think that it will be easier. And with the PPZ project, what NiPost will then do is that we're backward integrating. So what the PPZ will allow us to do is warehousing. So warehousing, our international mail processing center, sorry, our office of exchange automatically becomes a customs-free zone, because we are then doing customs on behalf of customs in that area. It's a lot of technical stuff, but what then happens is that we are able to become the backbone for e-commerce for other e-commerce companies in Nigeria, right? So once we're able to get all our licenses, I never see myself as a competitor to any other courier company. I see myself as a backbone. So once we're able to get all our ducks in a row in terms of all the licensing, all the integrations with the World Customs Organization and UPU, it would then be easier for e-commerce companies in Nigeria to sort of do the outbound and inbound and sort of skip all the customs issues they have in Nigeria and in other designated countries.
Awesome. That's super helpful. Thank you so much, Tola. The last question on the logistics front, and I'll just open this up to anyone that wants to jump in. But aside from things that we've already discussed, or is there anything else that's making intra-African trade remain so expensive compared to other regions? Obviously, we've talked about air travel issues, regulations, infrastructure, all of that kind of things. But is there anything we haven't touched on yet?
I don't know if we talked about the AFTA in terms of just harmonizing the standards. So AFTA is the African Continental Free Trade Area. And I think one of the things that we should be looking to leverage on at the moment, Africa is so fragmented. It's like dealing with where there are 54 countries in Africa, all speaking different languages. And I think with the AFTA being implemented, over time, it will make it easier for intercontinental, trade across Africa. So that's something we are really looking forward to. A couple of countries have signed the agreements, but in terms of implementing it, once that's implemented, we will find that Africa can actually be a global leader in terms of, exporting items and offering services to other parts of the world if we can all just speak as one voice.
Awesome. That's been super helpful. Thank you, guys. I appreciate that. I'd love to bring in some of our fashion panelists now, specifically Banke, Obida, and Ozina. What challenges do you face in sourcing materials or exporting finished products across African countries? As I've traveled around, it's obviously very clear that for countries and economies to advance significantly in their economic development, they need to be net exporting products and services, because when you net export products and services, you net import hard dollars, you stabilize the currency, all of that kind of stuff. But what challenges specifically are you facing in sourcing those raw materials, adding value to it locally, and then exporting the finished products?
So I'll go first. Hello, everyone. Pleasure to be here speaking with all of you. I think the largest issue we have is things you've spoken about before of how much easier it is to import from Europe or from China and vice versa as well to export there. But for us, for Obida, we're a small brand that's growing. We are seeing demand in new places, including Africa, but it's so much harder to try and get to customers in Africa. For instance, Senegal, Dakar is something that's very, very interesting to us. But we face two challenges. The first is actually trying to get goods there, but even more importantly, is trying to get payment. It feels almost impossible to try and get payment. Oftentimes, as in from Nigeria straight to Senegal, oftentimes we're actually having to be paid in a European account. And so those are quite interesting characteristics of trying to trade across Africa. I don't know if any of the other brands have observed similar things.
Banke, any thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely agree with Obida. I think trade from business to business is easier because we can wait longer for the payment, because the payment from like a Dakar, the payment might take, 4 to 6 days. And they can pay directly to our Nigerian account. Although the process is very long, it's very tedious. It's a lot of like information that you have to share with them, and it has to go through a partner bank with your bank. But when you're selling directly to the customer, it's like by then the customer has lost interest, because first of all, the payment takes a long time to get to us, and they're not sure whether it's going to work, so they're already nervous in making that transaction. And then the delivery process, it takes a long time. It's much easier for me to send something to the UK than send it to South Africa. That can take up to 10 days. So I think there's just the whole process is very long. So in terms of selling to other African countries, what we found easier is just having other partners, other stores that we work with. And otherwise we can do, the only way you can do a B2C is through our website. Some of the African cards don't work and they probably have to use European or American cards. And so those are the struggles we have, really.
Got it. Okay, so focusing on B2B helps. Ozina, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, good evening, everyone. Thank you, Zach, for moderating this. So I deal in retail, so I don't handle sourcing of materials and stuff, but we send out finished products, and basically both issues are things that we face. So for example, we have stockists and brands that we sell in, example, Ghana, and it's hard for us to send money across to them. It's always easier for us to take unofficial routes and, leverage on personal relationships in order to send payments across. And then being an online store completely, we have an international audience that has struggled as well with payments. And what I'd had to do years ago was literally register the business abroad and register it as an American company. And that way I was able to then have access to international payments. So I have African customers paying to us in America because it's faster and easier, as opposed to them being able to pay to us here in Nigeria, which is very frustrating.
Awesome. That's super, super helpful. I appreciate you guys chiming in on that. Let's turn it over to Wanuola. Retail expansion across African markets sounds promising, but what real world frictions exist when setting up operations or moving merchandise between countries?
Okay. Hi, Zach. Thank you for having me today.
Sure.
I'm because we're in retail and we work with international brands, it's really just more of movement of inventory or funds internationally on that level. But I think apart from all the general, issues with logistics that we've all heard about in terms of delays and clearing of inefficiencies that, cause unpredictable movement of inventory across the borders, hinders planning, and ultimately completely disrupts the customer experience. Obviously, now we've had to develop strong relationships with customs and clearing agents so that we reduce that bottleneck. The obvious thing for us is obviously FX and FX evaluation. If we're buying most of our products in the FX, but selling it in Naira, it means that there's a massive disparity between, what the value of the Naira is at the time that you bought it versus at the time that you've been able to sell it to be able to pay for said goods. Obviously, again, the unpredictability of landed costs and how that impacts our inconsistent pricing. So, because of the volatility, again, changes in duty, freight and port charges, it means that it's very, very difficult to maintain a certain price throughout, a certain period. The other obvious things are infrastructure. If you're working with international brands, for example, there's a standard that you have to abide by. And if you think about all the malls that we have in Nigeria, there's only quite a very, very little number that are able to meet those said standards. And it then means that you're not able to grow at the speed that they would like, because we're dealing with mass market or, fast fashion products who need more visibility and more accessibility to their customers. Then the obvious, again, high setup costs. Because of this issue, it means that you then have to either set up your own, stores, having to develop a high street market, or having to just pay rent in malls anyways that are usually charging dollars these days. It means that it's also very difficult in terms of setting up costs. You have to think about fixtures, fittings, etc., which also, again, have to meet those international requirements. And and then finally, of course, it's the payment solutions. With working with international brands, it means that whoever is being invoiced has to be the person who's paying. So your account has to be aligned with the invoicing. Therefore, you must have a banking, a bank institution that is within or outside of the tax haven, because then again, because of all of the fraud and whatnot issues that they have. So yeah, that's in a nutshell, those are the kind of issues that we face in terms of being able to set up brands locally.
That's really good. That's awesome. So staying on that topic of cross-border payments and stuff, and this is broad to any of the fashion leaders on the panel here. How do you guys currently handle cross-border payments when working with suppliers, manufacturers, or customers in other African countries?
I mean, I'll just be quick on this. It's pretty much the same thing, I'm sure, as everybody else. Like I said before, you have to be able to have an account, or which means you have to register the business, like Ozina said, in the said country, so that you're able to receive or make payments through that directly to them. Otherwise, it's going to be flagged. The only other thing that you can do is third parties. And if you have third party, payment issuers, it means that you have to also have them registered and to an extent have them be a part of your business, which is usually very messy. But if you don't have, an account abroad that is not within a tax haven, then it makes it completely, really difficult to be able to move payments.
That's really good. Anyone else?
I mean, yeah, I agree. You have to have a business. You have to have an account registered. There was a time where we were using some payment platforms in Nigeria to get international payments. And at first, actually, for some time, those payment platforms did work. But then it came to a point where the banks were registering these payments as fraud. So the customer would pay on the website. It would take 10 days for them to get their money back. By then, they're already screaming and shouting and getting frustrated. You've lost that transaction by the time they get their money back. And it looks like, the bank does charge them. So the money has left their account, but it's just hanging for days. So, what we had to do is just register the business outside Nigeria and take payments that way.
Nice. And this can be open to anyone as well. Where do you guys see technology playing a role in helping to reduce friction in both the physical trade and the payment side of things? If you're looking towards the next 5 or 10 years and the role that technology, AI, other things can play, where do you see some of that friction being reduced?
To be honest, I think where technology could come in for a lot of us is payments, first of all. Other sort of payment platforms that consistently work. So like Banker had mentioned, with the banks flagging payments, and then you cause this mistrust with customers. It's very bad for the brand, and it's very bad for growth. So technology that helps with payment would be very much welcome, and consistently as well.
That's awesome. Any other thoughts?
Yes, just to add to what Obida had mentioned, I think that definitely technology would really, really help when it has to do with payment. Affordable payment as well with charges. I think today Stripe looks like the most, the typical payment solution or gateway that you can easily integrate and where every card will most likely be acceptable. But if you then look at the charges that you're passing down to the client, a lot of businesses, a lot of companies, organizations lose businesses or lose money from that because people just walk away when they look at the charges. So definitely payment is a big thing that we need technology to crack for us. I remember in 2023 now, all our businesses was in Naira. We are last mile logistic company, and we had made projections that year with 450 Naira at the beginning of the year. Down the line, mid-year, a lot of regulations changed and dollar doubled. So we knew that it only made sense for us to start looking to expand our business outside Nigeria. So we opened it up to allow people shop from stores in the UK or US or China, ship to our address, and we bring it to Nigeria for them. But the major problem that we had at that time was payment. People wanted to pay Naira. We had third-party partners that we needed to pay in the currency of the country that we operated from, and we just couldn't find a partner at the initial stage who can do those conversions, or maybe accept Naira, pay me in dollars, accept Naira, pay me in pounds, and all of that. So we had to, I think it was Banker that mentioned that we were, at some point, we were forced to register our businesses in those countries, until we found a partner that filled that gap for us. So definitely, technology has to help us fix payment issues.
I think that would really help. I do think of some, me, Obida, Ozina, and everyone else, we're really fortunate actually that we have the ability to set up businesses in other countries. But I always, when I think about like other brands who don't have this access, it's really hard. It's really hard to break through, really, because everyone is trying to make foreign exchange now. Payments, I mean, getting payments is really hard. It's really frustrating. So you're hearing our voices, but we're even the fortunate ones in the industry.
That's really good. Now, when we look at a problem this size, and even like kind of zooming out, when we look at unlocking the next phase of large scale economic development in Africa, it's obviously going to take everyone, right? It's going to take millions and millions of people moving and working and building and investing in the same direction. And one of my favorite things, though, is like in everything that I've been a part of in my life, I've never seen more unity than I see in Africa. And everybody is just seems to be on the same page. Your win is my win kind of thing. And I absolutely love that about this continent. But like, what can the fashion industry specifically do to collaborate to create a more seamless trade ecosystem in Africa? And then we'll jump to the logistics side after that. But starting with maybe our fashion panelists, how can we collaborate more efficiently and effectively together?
I think conversations like this are necessary, and us acknowledging that this is a problem and us coming together to actually find real solutions, because a lot of brands are really struggling. A lot of brands, like Bankhead just mentioned, we are the fortunate ones, right? There are a lot of brands who are, the system is literally working against them. They're unable to handle shipping, they're unable to handle payments, which are very, very important parts of their business. So I feel like for there to be some headway for us to move forward, we need to start having more conversations and be more intentional about fixing these things for the industry as a whole.
I really do agree with you, Zina. Another thing I don't think we are speaking about enough is the duties as well. The duties are, I don't know, in Nigeria anyway, by the time you order something, by the time it gets to Nigeria, you have to pay the duties. It becomes like double the price, and in fact, I don't even know how they regulate the duties. Sometimes it's double, sometimes it's not quite double, sometimes you might get lucky, they may not charge you. You don't know how it's going to fall. So it's even hard to sometimes price. I know I definitely have spoken to friends friends within the industry. They've ordered things, and by the time it comes, by the time they add the duties, they're just like, I can't afford to clear it. It's too much. So I think, if we can look at, regular, so you know what to expect firstly, and maybe find a way to even decrease it, because it's really, really high, really high.
I think that makes a lot of sense. And as I talk to Western investors, just to give you some kind of color from them, investors aren't afraid of risk. We have no issue with risk. What they don't like is unquantifiable risk. And so, whenever the regulations are firm and exactly what it is, and you can do a math calculation and a probability and all of that, people are fine pouring billions and billions of dollars. But the issue stems when you're like, what are you talking about? My profit margin went from 30% to 15% because we doubled the duty or whatever it is. So from the investor side, I can definitely relate to that. Is there anyone on the fashion panel that wants to chime in that we can get to?
Yeah, I mean, I can go ahead from the other perspective, which is us trying to bring products into Nigeria as opposed to the other way around, because then we have a completely different set of challenges. Like, what would be great for us is if we were able to localize production, because you find that we're importing from China, from Germany, from Cambodia, from all over the world, whereas it's pretty much the same products that are coming from the same factories that we can actually produce here. So localizing production, it means that we're bringing it closer to home, bringing it closer to the people who we're actually trying to sell to. Another thing is, infrastructure development. We don't have nearly enough malls, and we have a really amazing retail culture that is developing and has developed over time. And I think what would be fantastic for us is if we were actually developing and investing into developing that, infrastructure that will help us have the platforms and have the, you know, stores, etc., to be able to push those actual products that we're trying to bring in. And I think this applies across board, which is data. Data is so important. But we generally work in silos, and because we work in silos, it means that we're not learning from each other's experiences. We don't understand what the market is really saying, and we're going blind actually across board. So what would be amazing is we had, like, you know, better data and forecasting, you know, of how things are going to go within the industry, and sharing insights across, you know, each of our individual markets, you know, and retail groups. And of course, the last thing would be logistics. Of course, logistics. How do we come together to make it easier for us? You know, warehousing, you know, distribution hubs, and consolidating all of those things. If you're thinking about it from moving products, mass products across the country, across the continent, even. Yeah, so that's it.
Yeah. That's awesome. And I love that, like, just getting it on the table, right? A lot of leadership experts talk about the last 10%, like, just put it on the table. What's the thing that's really holding you back? But let's move over to the logistics side, like you were talking about. Maybe for like the GIGs of the world and other logistics players, what can like the NIPOS of Africa, not just in Nigeria, but other countries, be doing to help you guys? Tola was talking about how she doesn't see herself as competition, but really a backbone for the Postal Service and logistics as a whole. So how can that collaboration be a little more effective for you guys?
All right, thank you very much, Zach, once again. So I think that we've done well with competition. We need a lot more collaboration. All right. When it comes to market dynamics, trying to gain market share and all of that, we can compete. But I think that maybe where we've not done so well is about collaboration. Like I mentioned earlier, one of the key issues militating against cross-border trade is the implementation of agreements, treaties, trade agreements, and all of that. Like I said, Africa is not lacking in trade agreements, treaties. All of these things are documented, they are coded somewhere. But when it comes to implementation, right, that's where we have the challenge. And we cannot leave all of that efforts to NIPOST alone. That's the honest truth, right? I mean, and I think that we're where we are today because that has been the approach, right? We always thought that NIPOST would be the savior of all of the courier companies, but that has not happened, right? So I think that we also need to collaborate, form some sort of peer group, right? Peer pressure, where we can come together and force the government, I mean, if I could use that word force, right? I mean, force the government to implement some of these trade treaties, some of these trade agreements, some of these things around AFCTA especially, right? Just to make trade across Africa as seamless as possible, right? I think that that's basically what I like to say to that.
That's great. Anyone else, like, how can logistics companies work more efficiently, effectively together when it comes to, you know, especially when it comes to handling payments in different currencies and things like that?
I was going to add that. Okay. Yeah, go on now.
No, go ahead, please. No, go ahead.
Okay. So I was going to say that in terms of like collaborations, we what we've actually seen is with NIPOST, we've actually started having a lot of roundtable discussions. And I think that has been very encouraging. We've started seeing that they like Tola said, they are like showing that they are the backbone of the logistics space. And they've actually reached out to actually get more information on how we can collaborate, because I mean, like Wonu said, working in silos doesn't help us. So all working together, being on those roundtable discussions, actually having a say in terms of like the data that they have, because they have a lot of data when it comes to logistics. Speaking with them will actually help us make better decisions. I think also in terms of, like everyone mentioned, everyone has currency issues, even us. Shion said the same thing. We have the same issue where we've had to open accounts abroad as well. So having payment platforms like Kyshi, for example, and other multi-currency platforms that allow you take on payments helps in terms of making the process seamless. And I think a lot more collaboration. So we've had discussions with Fez with regards to her warehousing, her storage boxes, where we bring in items and then we put things in the storage boxes to get them delivered to customers. So I think that's the way that logistics companies are beginning to look at it. Not everyone, you can't handle everything by yourself, and the industry is huge. So if everybody collaborates with each other, we'll see that everything will move smoother and there'll be enough room for growth.
That's great. Tola, you want to jump in there?
Yes. So I just want a couple of things, right? And this is just how to collaborate and how we're thinking of collaborating. So people had earlier discussed in terms of customs. I know customs is something that had come up. I just have a suggestion, right? I think that a lot of people misunderstand. So the Nigerian Customs Service actually has a harmonized HS code, harmonized system for particularly inbound, right? The Nigerian Customs Service in Africa is probably one of the most advanced. But I think there's a misunderstanding in coding. So a lot of people will think that a tariff maybe says 5%. But if you look further down, maybe you're importing fabric and it's 5%. But then further down in the sub codes, you will now realize that if there's an additional button on that fabric, it takes the tariff up to 7.5%. So this is just an advice. I think that there should be some sort of collaboration, particularly amongst the people who are shipping fashion inputs into the country or fashion out of the country, to have a conversation. And we are willing, NIPOS can easily help you set this up with the Nigerian Customs Service, because again, backbone, where you're able to speak with I think it's the DCG Trade and Tariff, to break it down for you so that you understand for your businesses, you're able to understand exactly how Nigerian Customs Service calculate your tariffs and levies. So for me, as NIPOS, there are two things we're doing. One, like I mentioned, we're getting our customs brokerage license to help the industry, because it's something that every single person that I know that imports into the country, that customs part, even for me, is an issue. It's easier for me to get a customs brokerage license. And that way, we can work with more people as opposed to people having to, interface with customs all the time. Secondly, one of the things that we're also doing is because of our Universal Postal Union, there's something called the International Financial System, which historically has been the system, probably if you talk to older people, they all talk about postal orders and money orders. So that system has been digitized into the International Financial System, which runs through technically every post office in the world. And most of it has been digitized, which allows for cross-border payments using the postal operator. So right now, we've signed up onto that, into the International Financial System. We're still at the level of doing bilaterals. We're waiting on the Attorney General of the country to sort of clear some particular parts of a sort of global, a global agreement that would then allow us to process payments from any country that's signed up onto the International Financial System. So most Asian countries are on there. I think the only major country that's not on there is the United States. They opted out of the IFS. But those are two things we're doing. One, helping people, the plan is to, when we get our customs brokerage, help smaller courier companies, help them with clearance. And two, for people who want to use our access to the International Financial System to do cross-border payments, which is basically any country that has it, you can pay it to, and you don't have to come to the post office. It's also digitized on our end. We call it Post Money. It's digitized on our end in that it goes directly to your bank account, so you're not getting a postal order. It's just integrated with, we're integrated with the Nigerian interbank settlement system. Lastly, there's also a program that CBN is doing, maybe because I'm in government, I have more information, which is a project that is sponsored by Afrexim that's allowing for cross-border payments. It was a big issue. CBN didn't agree to it before, but I think 2 months ago, they've agreed to this African platform. It's called PPAS, that then allows for cross-border payments. So banks, you probably want to check with your local bank to see if they've integrated into it. And the whole idea of it is to help with cross-border payment for the Africa Continental Free Trade Agreement. So mouthful, but I just wanted to get that information across.
No, that's super helpful. You want to hop in there, Shio?
Yes, I wanted to. Thank you very much, Tola. And I think that it was Ridwan that mentioned when we initially started that one of the problems that we have is access or availability of information. Tola has said a lot of things on this call today that some of us are probably hearing for the first time. So, and to counter what Sheon said, Sheon thinks that NIPOS is not coming to save us. I personally think that NIPOS would have to save us. And I mean, and I know that, and to be honest, thank you very much, Tola. You've been doing a lot since you got in. I mean, and a lot of us are looking at how we can begin to leverage NIPO's international deliveries at this, especially with the partnership with KLM. But a lot of people, small logistic players, still don't have access to this information. You also just shared with us something that could change our businesses regarding cross-border payments. We don't know about all of these things. So if there's a way that all of this information can be curated or put together on NIPO's website, or maybe, I don't know, newsletters, something that we can easily access and then begin to look for ways to adopt and implement it, I think it would be really, really helpful, especially regarding cross-border trade and even maybe around even fair regulations as well. I know you're doing a lot, but again, there are still, I mean, with regards to licensing, I know it's simplified now, but there are other things like data sharing, access to information, compilation of even things like the codes that you mentioned. And because I also think that maybe a lot of fashion organizations or fashion businesses don't even know what all these HS codes mean or what they represent. You just explained to us that an additional button could take a tariff from 5% to 7.5%. If there are ways where we can access this information through NIPOS, not necessarily to customs, I think that this would definitely be a game changer for us in the logistics space.
Awesome. That's great. Now, if I can turn it over briefly to the fashion panelists that we have, what can the logistics players who are on the call right now do to help you trade your products more seamlessly?
Information is always very good. Like Shion said, that was a lot of information that I had no idea about. So I'm now thinking, do I take the buttons off all my blouses before they come and then just sew them in Lagos? Because if that's going to make it cheaper for me, then why not? So I would say information is really, really key. I think maybe and how you deliver that information is also important. So maybe have more conversations like this. Newsletters, sharing monthly Reader's Digest or something. But I actually think, from what I've learned today, I definitely think sharing of information is actually really vital at this point for all of us. Because I know, like today, I actually heard that there was some, like they're reducing import duties for certain items, or someone shared that with me today, and so I'm already looking into it, but I had no idea. Or if I didn't have this conversation with this person, then I wouldn't have any idea, and that really would affect my business quite significantly. So I think sharing of information is great.
Amazing. Anyone else on the fashion side?
Just to go on that, I think transparency as well, because there's a lot of information that's being shared, but sometimes we don't have the full picture or the full scope of things. And so some transparency also would help. And I also, I think someone had mentioned about digitization of a lot of processes as well. I think that would help. I mean, I'm online, I'm e-commerce, so I'm all for the technological side of things as well. But yes, information is key.
I think what I would be wanting from the logistics companies as well would be maybe, when not just transparency, but maybe if they could share predetermined routes. So, for instance, what we always find difficult as well is when somebody wants to buy on a website, but we don't have standard shipping costs. Just more information about like standardization would be wonderful.
Awesome. That's great. Now
I'd like to add something a bit different.
Yeah, please.
Okay, so I everything we've talked about so far is fantastic. The role of technology, cross-border payment, and everything, but I've seen firsthand what adoption can do, right? Especially when people know that something exists for them, and they take advantage of it. So I'm going to give an example that speaks to this fact, right? I think that if people start to realize that they can build businesses from here and they can have customers in Cameroon in Niger, in the Gambia, in Mali, in Malawi, in Burkina Faso, and so on and so forth. And they know that they're going to be actual people that wants to buy, actual demand from these places. They would focus on that. So today, for example, if you look at the market, people only make businesses for people in their country, and of course to other countries, Asia and UK, US, and so on and so forth. Now, as we're doing that, right, I think that we need to start to cultivate that, and I think that as stakeholders, and of course, hopefully the government also can get some form of input into this. We can help push more people into programs that help them create more for Africa, because this agreement, these policies will be implemented, yes. However, the best way to adopt them is to push people to production and for them to service this market. It's no news that we're a consumer economy across Africa, right? And if we continue to be a consumer economy, there's nothing to export, even if we get everything working. I'm going to give an example. Prior to 2 years ago, right? If you want to do some of this branding for retail items, right? Usually done in China. It's like the large ones, the bespoke ones, right? Usually things that you see for snacks and so on and so forth. That kind of branding is majorly done in China. Some are still heavily done there today, right? And there was 2 years ago a company in Ghana. I can't remember the name currently. Purchase some of the equipment and basically move production into Ghana. And today now, they are helping people cut down time to expect import from China for their packaging items. They're helping them cut down costs and of course also cut down time. So even though some of the issues still exist today in terms of shipping and everything, however, some people are still able to key into that opportunity. The second thing is that this is quite clear and visible that there's need for African items in terms of our traditional artifacts, our arts, our fashion, and so on and so forth in most countries. Now, it's interesting that we still haven't started thinking about how to help people that locally produce here, push them into those stages. We're more important. I think we're more focused on what we can get in terms of than what we can push out for our people. I'm thinking about this passionately because it's something I've seen over and over again. Yes, most of the issues that we mentioned today pulls back to two things. It's a demand and supply issue. When the demand is there, the airline would increase the plane doing the servicing the route.
Sure.
If the demand is there, if the demand is there, obviously a lot of the other things will open. I'll give an example. Something that's happening currently is that due to devaluation and increase in price for freight prices, right? As entrepreneurs, we are already creating alternative ways for people to ship items abroad at half the cost that traditional couriers would do them. We're doing this because there's a demand. So if tomorrow, for example, if tomorrow, there's a demand, a demand, considered demand for maybe fashion items in Malawi, trust me, we people on this call, we're going to make it work because that's what we do. However, I think that as core of work that we need to be sound, we need to continue to sound for people that can make this work in rooms, right? I'm talking banks, I'm talking people in government, I'm talking people Elizabeth Prasa, I'm talking people, in other areas that concern this. We need to let them know that it's enough of taking our people to Asian countries to get funding and everything. Let's try and push and market our products more to more African countries. Let them also try and buy from them and so on and so forth. So I think if we do that,
That's great.
you'll be amazed at the impact that would happen because these things will not implement itself. That's my take.
That's great. Well, there's two things there that I love that you said. And the first is that like being a net exporter as opposed to a net importer is really important, just from a macroeconomic standpoint. But the second is the idea of collaboration amongst the fashion and logistics players. Obviously, like if one company has 5,000 pairs of whatever to sell, or to ship across countries, and they call the airline, they're like, okay, like this isn't that much. But if you pool together, if there's able to create a network or a club of different fashion players who are like, hey, we've got 50,000 pieces of XYZ, we need a ship. Okay, all of a sudden there's more demand, and so there's power in coming together. And I think Africa is obviously a continent of amazing entrepreneurs and talent, but a lot of businesses just starting and forming, as opposed to, the Amazons of the world that can twist the arm of UPS and FedEx and all of that kind of stuff. So that's awesome. But as we kind of start to wrap up, there's one Q&A question I want to take, and then I'd love to just leave with a word or two from each of you. But the one Q&A question has to do with the role of technology in advancing delivery, despite some of the other challenges in infrastructure. So, we've talked about how infrastructure can be a challenge. Do you guys see an opportunity for technology? I'm thinking like drones and things like that, where you can, even in places that might not have address systems, like, can you use drones, drop a pin? Drones are able to deliver products much more efficiently and effectively and quicker. What kind of role do you see technology playing over the next 5 or 10 years?
So as for me, right, obviously the roles will be visible and loud and clear. As of today now, we're there's a company called Zipline, who specializes in drone delivery for healthcare products, healthcare items, bloods, emergency toolkits for for first aid and so on and so forth, right, in remote areas and stuff like that. So you're going to see that we'll continue to see that as much, but there's so much that the technology can do if we let it do it, right? Obviously, it's an enabler, but it needs to enable something, and I think that's and I think that's where we are as a continent. That's where we are as a people. Obviously, if as entrepreneurs we employ technology, it will help us speed up operation faster, make things better, and so on and so forth. If the governments and most of the other players also embrace the technology, we're going to be able to do things in incredibly different ways. However, there's a part that we're still stuck at, which is that the way things are at today, some people are benefiting a lot from it, and unfortunately that's affecting a lot. So some people are hell-bent, they're gatekeepers who are hell-bent on keeping things the way they are. So I'm hoping that we're able to, and of course that exists across different economies. So I'm hoping that we are able to slay our own demon. If we're able to do that, obviously technology is going to be able to help us a lot. Of course, technology enables collaboration, and if we use technology to collaborate more, I think we can do a whole lot more. I'm looking forward to having a time that will come where we have communities of logistic players across Africa, across several countries, which means that we can share data, share information. We can have other people as our delivery partners or delivery agents in their own countries who pick up our items and run the last mile delivery and so on and so forth. Because the more layers that we have and that we have all together, the more alternatives that we have, and of course everybody benefits as a whole, as to being stuck with one options which may or may not work at one point or the other. So that's where I think that if we can use technology to enable that first, I think a lot of possibilities will happen. I don't see today's big technologies doing a lot for us in the next 10 years, but I see like the basic ones utilized effectively. I see them producing tremendous results in terms of collaboration.
Thank you. That's helpful. All right, so we're gonna wrap up right now, and I would love to
just quickly.
Yeah, please.
I want to talk about technology, and I think it's something that I think particularly the courier companies. So one of the major problems that a lot of courier companies, including IPOST, has had is always been route mapping, optimization, and things like that. So one of the things we're doing, which is again a backbone thing, is we're currently moving from I'm sure most people here don't even know that we have a postcode system in Nigeria. I mean, it's very archaic. I think it was done in the 80s. But right now we're in the process of moving it to a digital postcode, and the granularity is right down to each individual building in the country. So right now we're mapping the entire country, right? So house to house, so it's house to house, centroid of each house.
And are you using AI and stuff to do that?
Well, so there's obviously we're using satellites, we're using ArcGIS, and then AI in terms of boundary mapping, because one of the biggest issues in Nigeria is boundary mapping within wards, local governments, and things like that. We're doing that, and the plan is to roll out the entire thing hopefully by the end of the year, because it's very intensive. It's also very ground intensive, even when you use AI. And so what that technology will allow, particularly courier companies, and even beyond that, is mapping, timing, planning, and things like that. So it'll make it easier. So even if you decide to use a drone, it also makes it more efficient and more precise. And I think that once we launch that, it will probably revolutionize even like beyond the courier business, emergency services, urban planning, and things like that over the next 5 to 10 years. Yeah.
That's a great point. And just real quick, Tola, when did you guys start that? Just to give people an idea of how long that takes. You said by the end of this year. Have you been working on it since the start of the year? Or?
Oh no, so we've been working on it since 2023. I mean, obviously, startup stuff, government sometimes isn't very, sometimes the most efficient. But I think even the framework, working with the UPU in terms of what does the framework look like, the nomenclature. This one is alphanumeric, so we're also moving from a pure numeric to alphanumeric, like you would have in, I think, UK postcode. So, and you first do all the satellite mapping. We use a couple of different companies to map and then overlay almost 20 different satellite maps to get the most, precise one in Nigeria. Then the ground truthing. So no matter what you do aerially, you literally have to ground truth the entire square footage of Nigeria. To make it more efficient. So it's a lot of work, and we've been doing that. We just finished our pilot in Abuja here, and then we're doing nationwide very soon.
Amazing. And that's a government program?
I'm sorry?
That's a government program or private sector?
The NIPOS. Oh no, it's
NIPOS
government NIPOS, yeah.
Amazing. Awesome. That's amazing. Well, thank you guys all for being here. I would love to just finish with a quick call or a quick answer from each of you. Just regarding, what's like one actionable piece of advice or insight that you would give to either an up and coming fashion entrepreneur or logistics operator looking to expand into Africa? And then if you could just paint us a quick, maybe 20-second picture of where you see your companies being in the next 5 years or so, I think that'd be a great way to end up.
I can go first. So I would say collaborate. You can't, whether in the logistics space or in the fashion space, you can't build everything by yourself alone. You need other companies, whether from the technology side of things to payment to logistics to regulators. I mean, you need to be open to collaboration. And for us at FAIRS, we've been doing this over the years. We work with logistic aggregators, we work with third-party partners, we work with regulators as well. And I think that if we focus on that more, even better over the next 5 years, definitely help us scale and grow our business beyond the shores of Africa and to other parts of the world. Yeah, thank you, Zach.
Great. Awesome. Let's move maybe to Tola, just a quick 30 seconds. Any last remarks?
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, from the vantage point that I sit in, I think I see a lot of potential, just even beyond the logistics or fashion business. Is just basically like a rebuilding of Africa, with sort of fashion culturally in front and, obviously logistics connecting Nigeria. So for me, I think that anybody who wants to go into this business, obviously take a hard look at yourself, because it could be tough. But at the end of the day, what you're building is not just your community, you're rebuilding Africa. That's what I really think about it. Like our economy from the base up. Yeah.
What more exciting thing to be involved in? Anyone else?
I would say, yes. I would re-emphasize on collaborations and also being patient. Running a business in Africa is not for the faint-hearted, especially in fashion and logistics. It's really not for the faint-hearted. So I would say, in terms of the fashion brands shipping things out, I'll say buffering time into your delivery space, and in terms of your delivery timelines and production. And for the logistics space as well, it's just to kind of manage. We have to just learn to manage clients' expectations and keep them informed at all times. We've been running Cargo Plug now for 12 years. And one of the reasons why we started was because it was a pain point for us. We didn't have any transparency when we started off. We didn't have any access to what duty costs were. So we always had, it was a painful experience receiving parcels in Nigeria. And now with our platform, we have shipping APIs and we allow customers have access to what it will cost in terms of inclusive of duties when they are importing into the country. We try as much as possible to provide all the information prior to shipping because we know that their business depends on it. So, and also I think another thing is just like Tola mentioned, gave us a lot of information. I think it's also to keep our ears on the ground and keep listening out to what's going on and key into what's happening in the country so we can rebuild and just be patient with our growth.
Awesome.
Can I go?
Yeah,
very
go for
quickly.
it.
Advice. Okay. I mean, I think especially if you're thinking about exporting, is to find the quickest, most cost-effective way to deliver without compromising on your quality, because your quality then becomes something that is representative of the entire continent. So it then matters where it is that you're going. So expanding beyond borders is tough enough. So you have to be as simple as you can. Simplicity is very key. So focus on what moves the needle, whether it's speed, reliability, trust. Trust is very, very important. And tailor your approach to the realities of your market, the realities of your customers, and because what works for Mr. A might not work for Mrs. B, so
Sure.
Be very, very cognizant of what works for you. So, and data, that's where data comes in.
Amazing. Obita, 30 seconds.
I think, and it hurts to say this, but this idea of perseverance, of just keep going, of having faith, there is a bigger picture here. There is an incredible thing we're doing here, which is sharing Africa with the world, which is redefining the way that Africa is being thought of. I know for like a lot of the fashion brands here, there are a lot of customers who are for the first time touching contemporary fashion made from Nigeria, and that's a wonderful thing to be championing. So I think it's just to keep going. I would like to add though that just to add as a side that with talks like this, there's always so much placed upon us, the business owners, the logistics partners, but I really do think that government has its part to play and really does need to step up. But, yeah.
Yeah.
Any last thoughts?
I just go. I think I'm probably the last person. One of the things that I would say is with my experience, running ship for almost 5 years now, and what I've seen and everything. One of the things that I said I'll tell any business owner today is Nigeria is basically the continent. It's not built for you to do things on your own. Honestly, things are not transparent enough for you to do it on your own. You don't have that too much information and so on and so forth. So your best bet would be to work with people that have done it before. So I'm going to give you an example, right?
Give us 20-second example.
Oh, okay. Yeah, thank you. So just by working with a custom broker, for example, you can have how much you're paying customs by 50%. And so on and so forth. That's an example. So just by working with the right logistic company, for example, you can get creative and reduce the logistic cost and so on and so forth. So these are just examples of how you may be able to do this. But having to run this on your own might be more headache than you might have wanted. And this is similar to what we do at Ship, and that's how I've been able to get some of these experiences.
Great.
So I think that across both just Nigeria as a whole and across Africa, I think it's best to work with people that are on the ground, that knows this thing, that have done it, and you'll be amazed at how much efficiency you can get out of that not so structured environment. Thank you.
Great, awesome. Is there anyone else on the panel that wanted to chime in that didn't get a chance to?
All right. Thank you very much again, Zach. I'd just like to mention something that has been mentioned repeatedly across board is collaboration, and collaboration basically with a view to scaling, right? And I think that's where GIG Logistics comes in. I'd just like to speak to what we're doing. We have a focus for the next 5 years to expand. I mean, regional expansion. I think it's safe to say that we're done with national expansion. We're still exploring a few more options, but I mean, right now we have coverage in every state of the federation, 146 retail outlets. We have 5 retail outlets in Ghana. We're considering regional expansion into East Africa. We have an outlet in the US, in the UK, in China, in Canada, and a couple of other countries that are coming up.
Awesome.
Hopefully before year end. And the reason why we're doing this is because we understand that setting up a logistics business can be very capital intensive, right? Not everybody would have the financial wherewithal to do that. So we want people to be able to leverage. We want to build an ecosystem where people can leverage our network, leverage our expertise, leverage our technical competence to do business, right? I mean, I think Sheon spoke of aggregators earlier. We're actually coming up with something. Another thing is product expansion, right? We're coming up with a product that basically just helps courier companies leverage our network, our size, our reach to be able to do more things for themselves. Yeah.
Great. Well, thank you so much. And thank you so much to our panel for joining us. Such a fruitful conversation. I can see really positive comments in the comments section. And, obviously a lot of takeaways, 3 of which more conversations like this, sharing more information, having more transparency, and then better payment solutions as well. But thank you to Kyshi and the team there, Ayo and Jethro and everyone there for hosting this, first of many sessions to follow. So thanks to everyone for joining in, and stay tuned on social media for more sessions.
Bye.
Thank you, Zach.
Thanks, guys.
Thank
Bye.
Thank you, Zach. Bye. Thanks,
Thank
guys.
you, everyone. Bye.